Pingyang City, Huiyin Tower. Ethan slowly sat up and rubbed his pounding head. He had gotten completely wasted the night before, and the hangover was brutal. For a few seconds, he assumed he had simply passed out somewhere unfamiliar. Then he looked around. Wooden beams, old-fashioned tables, clay wine jars, swords resting beside diners. None of it looked remotely modern. "Okay," he muttered. "Where the hell am I?" Before Ethan could make sense of the room, angry shouting broke out nearby. He turned and saw a Taoist priest facing a broad-shouldered man dressed in expensive robes. A bloodied body lay on the floor between them. The priest raised his sword and shouted, "Tian Boguang, you shameless criminal! You hurt innocent people and still dare sit there drinking? Face me!" Ethan froze when he heard the name. Tian Boguang? Ethan whispered. He scanned the restaurant again, and the name Huiyin Tower suddenly clicked in his mind. In his previous life, he had spent years reading martial arts novels and watching adaptations. Huiyin Tower was where Ling Huchong confronted Tian Boguang while trying to protect Yilin. Ethan looked toward a corner and spotted an injured young swordsman beside a young nun in pale pink robes. His suspicion became certainty. So this is really the martial world. The realization hit Ethan hard. Memories that did not belong to him suddenly flooded his mind. His head throbbed as another life merged with his own. This body had grown up alone, wandering through the Jianghu, without parents or a stable home. Like Ethan in his previous life, the original owner loved wine. Unlike Ethan, he had barely enough money to afford the cheap stuff. Back on Earth, Ethan had been a struggling web novelist. When he was younger, he dreamed about wandering the world with a sword, drinking with friends, righting wrongs, and living without regret. Reality had crushed most of that dream. Bills piled up, his writing career went nowhere, and drinking became an easy way to forget how disappointed he felt. Now, somehow, he had been given a second life inside the kind of world he used to fantasize about. For a moment, Ethan felt almost excited. He could travel the Jianghu, learn legendary martial arts, drink the strongest wine, meet extraordinary people, and finally live on his own terms. Then he looked at the corpse on the floor and remembered the obvious problem. This was not a TV drama. People here killed over insults, grudges, money, sect rivalries, and sometimes nothing more than pride. Right now, Ethan was basically an ordinary drifter. He needed strength, and he needed it fast. While the Taoist priest continued arguing with Tian Boguang, Ethan noticed a wine jar beside him. The scent immediately triggered the body's old habit. "Well," he murmured, lifting the jar, "if I'm going to die in a martial arts world, I might as well have a drink first." He took a long swallow. A clear female voice suddenly sounded inside his head. Ding. Alcohol consumption detected. Ethan nearly choked. Ding. Binding Dionysus system. A heartbeat later, another notification followed. Binding complete. The Dionysus system allows the host to become stronger through drinking. Ethan stared at the jar in disbelief. The system explained that alcohol could improve his internal energy, constitution, and comprehension. Special wines or special occasions could even unlock martial arts, weapons, pills, mounts, and other rewards. Ethan looked down at the cheap but powerful liquor in his hand. The system spoke again. Host is drinking Burning Blade wine. Random martial comprehension increasing. Then a new name appeared in his mind. Fu Hongxue. Ethan's eyes widened. Knowledge of a legendary quick-draw saber art began pouring into his thoughts. First 10%, then 20, then 50. He immediately raised the jar and drank faster. By the time Ethan emptied the jar, the system chimed again. Congratulations. The host has perfectly comprehended Fu Hongxue's saber-drawing essence. Endless movements flashed through Ethan's mind. Drawing, cutting, returning the blade, timing, distance, killing intent. It felt as if he had practiced the same motion tens of thousands of times. His breathing changed, his grip steadied, and the battered saber on his table suddenly felt familiar. The transformation happened quietly. Nobody in Huiyin Tower noticed anything unusual. A few customers glanced at Ethan sitting in the corner with his eyes closed and assumed another drunk had passed out. Meanwhile, the confrontation in the middle of the restaurant continued. The Taoist priest from Mount Tai attacked Tian Boguang, but Tian's saber was simply too fast. After dozens of exchanges, the priest was defeated and forced to retreat with injuries. The next part unfolded almost exactly as Ethan remembered. Ling Hucheng, already wounded, used his wits to lure Tian Boguang into a seated contest. He could not overpower the man directly, so he relied on tricks, nerve, and Tian Boguang's pride. Eventually, Ling Hucheng won the bet. He leaned back, exhausted but smiling. "Brother Tian, a man of the Jiang who keeps his word. You're not planning to back out in front of everyone, are you?" Tian Boguang cared too much about his reputation to openly break the agreement. He slammed his saber onto the table and glared at Yilin. "Fine. I'm in a good mood today. I'll let the little nun go." He stood and headed toward the stairs. Nobody moved to stop him. The patrons knew exactly what kind of man he was, but they also knew how dangerous his blade could be. Ethan watched the room fall silent as Tian Boguang prepared to leave. Everyone looked relieved simply because the killer was walking away instead of causing more trouble. Ethan felt his stomach turn. A man like that would leave today and hurt more people tomorrow. The entire room knew it, yet fear kept everyone in their seats. Ethan's fingers closed around the handle of his old saber. Then he opened his eyes. "Tian Boguang," Ethan said calmly. His voice was not loud, but it carried through the silent tower. "You really think you can kill someone here and just walk out?" Every head turned toward him. Tian Boguang stopped at the top of the stairs. For a second, even he looked surprised. The other customers stared at Ethan, as though he had suddenly announced he wanted to die. Now that they were paying attention, people noticed Ethan's appearance for the first time. He was young, probably around 18, with sharp features, dark hair, and a relaxed expression that did not match the situation. He looked more like a wandering young noble than a hardened fighter. That made his challenge seem even crazier. Someone whispered, "Is that kid drunk?" Another replied, "He has to be." Tian Boguang turned around and walked back with a mocking grin. "What's this? A little hero trying to make a name for himself?" He leaned close enough to smell the alcohol on Ethan's breath and burst out laughing. "I knew it. You're drunk. No wonder you suddenly grew a spine." Ethan barely reacted. "Your nose works better than your conscience," he said. "Yeah, I drank. I'm just not drunk enough to ignore you." Tian's smile faded. Ethan continued, "You've survived this long because people are afraid of the saber in your hand. That's it. Without that blade, you're nothing but a coward who preys on people weaker than you." A chill spread through the room. Everyone could feel Tian Boguang's killing intent rise. His hands slowly settled on his saber. "Kid," he said, "you're begging me to kill you?" Ethan stood. "A predator like you should have been stopped years ago." Several people sucked in a breath. Ling Hucheng's expression changed immediately. Whatever he thought of the stranger, Ethan had clearly pushed Tian Boguang past the point of reason. Just as Ethan was about to step forward, another system notification rang in his mind. New mission. A hero should never fight without wine. The system continued. Take the wine from Tian Boguang's table. Use the strength of wine to punish the villain. Mission rewards will be issued upon completion. Ethan almost laughed. That works for me. He would have fought Tian Boguang anyway. The mission just gave him another excuse to drink. Before he could move, however, Ling Hucheng forced himself to stand and step between them. Ling Hucheng was badly injured, but he still planted his sword on the floor and used it to support himself. "Brother Tian," he said with a strained smile, "you're famous throughout the Jianghu. If word gets out that you killed some drunk kid because he ran his mouth, people might laugh at you." Tian Boguang narrowed his eyes. "You already ruined my fun once. Now you want to protect him too." Ling Hucheng turned toward Ethan and gave him a desperate look. "You've had too much to drink. Apologize and let this go." Yilin quickly nodded. "Please listen to him. Tian Boguang really will kill you." Her concern was sincere. Ethan looked from her to Ling Hucheng and felt a little more respect for the wounded swordsman. Ling Hucheng barely knew him, yet he was willing to risk himself for a stranger. Still, Ethan had no intention of backing down. "You should sit down before your wounds get worse," he told Ling Hucheng. Then he looked at Yilin and smiled. And you don't have to worry about me. Compassion doesn't mean letting evil walk away. Sometimes protecting people means stopping the person hurting them. Yilin stared at him, surprised by how calm he sounded. Tian Buguang laughed. Hear that, Ling Hu Chong? The kid doesn't want your help. His eyes shifted toward Yilin, and the little nun already looks impressed. Maybe our young hero knows more about charming women than I do. Ling Hu Chong grimaced. Brother, seriously, don't be reckless. Ethan ignored Tian's taunting and walked straight toward his table. Ethan set his old saber beside Tian Buguang's wine jar, poured himself a full bowl, and drank it in one shot. He smacked his lips. Not bad. Finjio. Then he poured another bowl and looked at Tian. Want one last drink before you die? Tian Buguang's face darkened. Finished, he asked. Good. Now I can send you on your way. The entire floor went quiet. Ethan rested one hand on his saber. I've heard Tian Buguang's fame comes from his speed. Funny coincidence. I use a fast saber too. He tilted his head. I'll even let you draw first. That way, when this is over, you won't have an excuse. A few customers stared at him in disbelief. To them, it sounded like suicidal arrogance. Yilin clasped her hands together and silently prayed. Ling Hu Chong watched with a frown, searching for some sign that Ethan had a plan. Tian Buguang shoved a table aside, clearing space between them. His broad hand wrapped around his saber handle. Ethan's pale fingers rested lightly on the worn grip of his own blade. The contrast made the scene look almost unreal. For several breaths, neither man moved. The room felt frozen. Then Tian Buguang attacked first. His saber flashed from its sheath and cut through the air with frightening speed. He had terrorized the Jianghu for years for a reason. His technique was direct, vicious, and fast enough that most ordinary fighters would not even have time to react. Tian Buguang's eyes filled with confidence. He already imagined Ethan's body hitting the floor. Then Ethan smiled. His saber left its sheath. Nobody saw the full motion. There was only a sudden flash, like lightning crossing the room. Ethan had drawn second, yet his blade arrived first. Tian Buguang felt something cold brush his neck and froze in place. Tian's saber stopped less than an inch from Ethan. He lifted one hand to his throat and found blood on his fingers. His face went pale. He had not even seen Ethan's attack. The difference in speed was terrifying. Ethan could have ended the fight with that first draw, but at the final instant, he had deliberately controlled the cut. Now you understand, Ethan said quietly. Your saber isn't fast. Fear replaced Tian Buguang's arrogance. Ethan looked at him with open disgust. You've spent years terrorizing people because you thought nobody could stop you. Think about how many people hated you and still had to watch you walk away. Tian Buguang stumbled backward. Ethan's hand moved again. Another flash of steel forced Tian to drop his stance and retreat in panic. Ethan's second strike was even more humiliating. With one precise flash of steel, he castrated Tian Buguang, permanently taking away the weapon he had used to prey on innocent women. Tian staggered backward in horror, his confidence completely shattered. Ethan showed no sympathy. Now you get a small taste of what helplessness feels like. The people around them stared in stunned silence. The young drunk they had pitted moments earlier had complete control of the fight. Ethan set his saber on the table and poured another bowl of wine. Tian Buguang's eyes suddenly changed. He saw an opening. Rage overpowered fear. You arrogant bastard, he shouted, gathering every bit of strength he had left. He launched himself forward and swung with the fastest, hardest strike of his life. Ling Hu Chong shouted, Watch out! Yilin cried out at the same time. Ethan did not even turn fully toward him. Relax, he said. A blade that slow couldn't touch me if he swung it 100 times. His hand moved. The draw looked almost lazy compared with Tian's desperate attack. Yet the result was immediate. Tian Buguang's saber froze in midair, and Ethan's blade passed cleanly across his neck. A moment later, Tian's head fell, and his body collapsed. His final words were barely a whisper. So fast. Silence swallowed Huiyin Tower. Everyone stared at Ethan. Tian Boguang, a man who had terrorized the martial world for years, had been crushed by an unknown young swordsman in only a few exchanges. Ethan calmly sheathed his blade, lifted the bowl he had poured earlier, and drank. Now that, he said with satisfaction, was worth drinking to. Inside his mind, the system chimed. Mission complete. First heroic act confirmed. A list of rewards appeared one after another. Peerless cultivation art. Wedding dress divine art. Divine weapon. Red sleeve saber. Peerless saber technique. Dusk drizzle red sleeve saber. Peerless medicinal pill. 60 years of internal energy refinement. 10,000 taels of gold. Storage space unlocked. 10 cubic meters. Ethan nearly laughed out loud. The rewards were absurdly generous. First mission bonus, maybe, he thought. Either way, he was not going to complain. He drank another mouthful of wine while the room slowly came back to life. Ling Hu Chong and Yilin approached him, both still looking stunned by what they had just seen. Yilin reached Ethan first. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "I have Hengshan's Baiyin Xiongdan pill. It's good for internal injuries." Ethan smiled. "I'm fine, but your friend definitely needs it more." Yilin blinked, then turned and finally remembered Ling Hu Chong was still badly wounded. "Senior brother Ling Hu, I'm sorry." She hurriedly handed him the medicine. Ling Hu Chong took the pill with an awkward smile, then lifted a jar of wine instead of immediately swallowing it. "I've traveled to Jianghu for years," he told Ethan. "The person I admire most has always been my master. But what you did today deserves a drink." He raised the jar. "For your courage and that unbelievable saber." Ling Hu Chong tried to drink deeply, but his injuries and the harsh liquor immediately made him cough. Ethan laughed and stopped him. "Don't prove anything while you're half dead. Heal first. Next time we meet, we'll drink properly." Ethan grabbed another jar, finished it in several long swallows, then set it down with a satisfied breath. "I've got somewhere to be," Ethan said, heading toward the stairs. Yilin watched him go, then suddenly called after him. "Wait, at least tell me your name. You saved me. I want to remember who to pray for." Ethan glanced back over his shoulder. "Ethan," he said, "just a wandering nobody. If fate's got a sense of humor, we'll run into each other again." He gave Yilin one last teasing smile. "And don't look so worried. It doesn't suit someone as pretty as you." Then he disappeared down the stairs. Yilin stood frozen for a moment. Her cheeks slowly turned pink. Of everything that had happened, one thought stubbornly remained in her mind. He called me pretty. Ethan did not stay near Huiyin Tower. He needed somewhere private to inspect the system rewards and strengthen himself before attracting more attention. He made his way through Hengyang City and eventually entered Chuanyu Courtyard, one of the city's most luxurious entertainment houses. The staff immediately assumed he had come looking for company. Ethan turned down every invitation. That earned him several confused looks, especially after he rented the best room in the building. He tossed the manager a gold ingot and ordered a full table of expensive food and as much good wine as they could bring. "Once it's delivered, nobody comes in unless I ask." Nobody. The gold made the rule easy to accept. When the door finally closed, Ethan sat down and opened the system interface. The reward he wanted to study first was the wedding dress divine art. 7 mysterious diagrams appeared in his mind, each showing meridians, acupuncture points, and a circulation route for internal energy. Even with his improved comprehension, the technique was difficult enough to make his head hurt. The core of the art was fierce and unusual. Its internal energy was pure, powerful, and violent, carrying the destructive force of thunder and fire. The old description claimed a gifted practitioner could show real results in 3 years, reach minor mastery in 5, and major mastery in 10. But the deepest stage required destroying and rebuilding the foundation before achieving perfection. Ethan stared at the diagrams and grinned. Normally, this would take forever. He glanced at the wine lined up across the room. Good thing normal rules don't really apply to me anymore. He sat cross-legged on the bed, opened a jar of high-quality wine, and drank. The Dionysus system immediately boosted his comprehension. As the alcohol spread through his body, Ethan entered a state close to enlightenment. The complex circulation routes became clearer. He guided his internal energy through his meridians according to the 7 diagrams. The weak energy left behind by the body's old training began to merge with the power he had inherited from Fu Hongxue. Ethan then took the Great Restoration pill rewarded by the system and refined it while continuing to drink. Time passed unnoticed. His internal energy repeatedly circulated, compressed, expanded, and returned to his dantian stronger than before. Because his original cultivation foundation was shallow, there were no major conflicting techniques to untangle. The wedding dress divine art swallowed everything cleanly. That made the technique almost perfect for him. If Ethan had already practiced several high-level internal arts, forcing them together could have caused serious problems. Instead, his foundation was simple enough that the new method could reshape it from the ground up. Hour after hour, wine jars emptied while his aura became steadier and far more dangerous. By the time Ethan opened his eyes again, several hours had passed. Empty jars covered the floor. He picked up the last one, drained it, and quietly circulated his true chi. Power rolled through his meridians like contained thunder. He had reached the peak of the acquired realm and, combined with his saber comprehension, possessed combat power approaching a half-step grandmaster. For someone who had entered this world only hours earlier, the leap was ridiculous. Ethan flexed his fingers and felt a level of control he had never experienced. His strength, reflexes, perception, and internal energy had all transformed. More importantly, the power felt stable. The system had not simply stuffed energy into him. It had allowed him to understand and refine it properly. Ethan finally turned to his second major reward. With a thought, a saber appeared from the storage space. He caught it in his right hand and stared. The weapon was gorgeous. Its blade carried a deep crimson tone, with translucent edges that made it look as though a line of red fire had been sealed inside crystal. The red sleeve saber was slightly shorter than a typical long saber, and its curved profile was elegant rather than bulky. Ethan rotated it beneath the room's lamplight. Beautiful or not, the balance told him immediately that it was built for killing. Now this, he said, is a real weapon. His old battered saber suddenly felt like scrap metal by comparison. Along with the weapon came the dusk drizzle red sleeve saber technique. Unlike Fu Hongxue's brutally direct quick-draw style, this technique felt graceful and unpredictable. Its movements flowed like rain at sunset, soft one moment and lethal the next. Ethan began practicing the first form, carefully matching the saber's path to the method embedded in his memory. He had barely completed a few movements when someone knocked on the door. Ethan stopped and frowned. He had specifically told the staff not to disturb him. Another knock followed. "Didn't I say nobody comes in?" he called. A woman answered from outside, her voice soft, confident, and faintly amused. "Young master, forgive me. I only came to deliver wine." Ethan's irritation faded slightly at the word wine. "Leave it outside." Instead of obeying, the door opened. A woman stepped into the room, carrying a small wine jar decorated with dragons and phoenixes. Ethan looked up, and for one rare moment, he forgot what he was about to say. She wore a deep crimson dress beneath a black cloak trimmed with gold. Long black hair fell almost to her waist, held partly in place by an ornate phoenix hairpin. Her features were striking, but what stood out even more was the combination of elegance and authority in the way she carried herself. She looked less like a courtesan and more like a queen who had wandered into the wrong building. The woman smiled when she noticed Ethan staring. "Are you planning to keep me standing at the door all night?" she asked. Her tone was playful, but something colder rested underneath it. Before Ethan answered, she moved. One instant she was near the entrance. The next, she was reclining beside the carved bed with the wine jar in hand. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Even with his newly strengthened perception, he had only barely followed her movement. That speed immediately cut down the list of people she could be. Hingyang City, Chuanyu Courtyard, red clothing, a ghost-like movement technique, a woman whose presence carried the pressure of a top master. One name exploded into Ethan's mind: Dongfang Bubi. In this version of the martial world, Dongfang Bubi was the mysterious leader of the Sun Moon Divine sect, and one of the strongest experts alive. The woman raised the wine jar and smiled. Flowers, wine, and a quiet night. Would the young master care to share a drink? Ethan's system reacted before he could answer. Top-tier Grandmaster detected. Dongfang Booby. New mission issued. Have Dongfang Booby personally pour wine for the host. Reward. Drunken Immortal Moon-Watching Step. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. A high-level movement technique was exactly what he was missing. His saber was fast, but without equally strong footwork, a true Grandmaster could still dominate the pace of a battle. Ethan smiled and walked closer. Your movement technique is impressive. The Eastern leader really does live up to the rumors. Dongfang Booby's eyes sharpened. You recognized me? For the first time, genuine surprise crossed her face. Her public identity was surrounded by mystery, and very few people should have been able to identify her this quickly. Ethan acted as though it were no big deal. You walked into my room carrying wine. That makes you my guest. He pointed at the jar. I'll drink with you on one condition. You pour it for me yourself. Dongfang Booby studied him for several seconds. A trace of cold amusement entered her eyes. You know who I am, yet you still make demands. You're either brave or stupid. Could be both, Ethan said. Dongfang Booby laughed softly. She lifted the jar with both hands, poured wine into a cup, and personally brought it toward him. The moment she did, the system chimed. Mission condition fulfilled. Reward issued. Drunken Immortal Moon-Watching Step. New movement patterns instantly appeared in Ethan's mind. Ethan accepted the cup and drank without hesitation. At the same time, he noticed something odd. A faint chill pressed toward his throat, almost like an invisible needle testing his defenses. He circulated the wedding dress divine art. Hot, powerful true chi moved through his body and instantly dispersed the pressure. Dongfang Booby's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Ethan set down the empty cup. Great wine. Great company. Only thing missing is a good fight. He looked directly at her. Eastern leader, want to trade a few moves? Dongfang Booby tilted her head. Most people trembled when they learned her identity. This young man had just asked her to pour wine and was now challenging her for entertainment. Since the young master is asking, she replied sweetly. How could I refuse? The last word had barely left her mouth when her body blurred into a crimson streak. She appeared in front of Ethan with terrifying speed. Ethan immediately used the newly acquired moon-watching step. His body drifted sideways in a smooth, almost effortless motion. Dongfang Booby missed by inches, but the attack had only begun. 3 silver needles shot from her fingers, each aimed at a vital point. At the same time, her sleeve snapped forward, filled with powerful true chi. Ethan found himself facing attacks from multiple angles at once. Instead of panicking, he grinned. Now we're talking. The red sleeve saber flashed into his hand. Ethan drew in one fluid motion. Crimson steel cut across the incoming needles, breaking their formation and knocking them aside. His saber continued forward toward Dongfang Booby. She did not risk catching the blade barehanded. Instead, she twisted and sacrificed part of her long sleeve to redirect the strike. Red silk fluttered through the air. Dongfang Booby landed several steps away and looked at Ethan with obvious surprise. When did someone like you appear in the Jianghu? Ethan rolled his wrist and raised the saber. You attacked first. My turn. He stepped forward and unleashed the dusk drizzle red sleeve saber. The technique looked almost beautiful. The crimson blade moved like sunset-colored rain, graceful but filled with killing pressure. Dongfang Booby fired more needles, each reinforced with sunflower true chi. Ethan's saber swept through them. Several shattered in midair, while the rest were forced away by the energy around his blade. Dongfang Booby's expression grew serious. She fully activated the strange movement art of the Sunflower Manual and retreated so quickly she seemed to vanish. Ethan followed with a moon-watching step, but her experience and raw speed still exceeded his. He did not mind. He had never expected to overpower one of the world's greatest masters in his first day here. What Ethan wanted was pressure. He pushed the wedding dress divine art harder. Fierce true chi surged through his meridians. He raised the red sleeve saber and switched from the flowing dusk drizzle technique to Fu Hongshue's explosive quick-draw principle. The slash released a crescent of crimson saber energy toward Dongfang Bubi. Dongfang Bubi's eyes widened. She flicked both sleeves forward, sending a web of silver needles through the air. The needles collided with the saber energy and shattered one after another. The remaining force tore through her outer sleeve before finally dissipating. Pale skin showed beneath the damaged fabric. Dongfang Bubi looked down at the torn cloth, then back at Ethan. "What a saber," she said quietly. "And what powerful true chi." Her teasing attitude was gone. "I came here because I heard someone killed Tian Boiguang with a single fast blade. I wanted to see who had done it." She paused. "I didn't expect the man I found to be this interesting." Dongfang Bubi straightened and recovered her usual authority. "Join the Sun Moon Divine sect. I'll make you deputy leader. You'll stand below only me and above everyone else." Ethan stared at her for a second, then laughed. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not built for taking orders. If you want to hand me the leader's seat, maybe I'll think about it." Dongfang Bubi's eyes narrowed, but she did not attack. She simply turned toward the door. "Then I won't force you. If you ever change your mind, the Sun Moon Divine sect will welcome you." She moved to leave. Ethan watched her carefully. Something about the fight had bothered him. Her movement was extraordinary, yet her true chi had occasionally felt uneven. The system confirmed his suspicion. Hidden internal injury detected in Dongfang Bubi. The host may brew ice crystal jade dew wine and combine it with wedding dress true chi to treat the condition. Mission reward: Peerless mental cultivation method, Bing Xinju. Ethan immediately understood. So that's why her energy circulation felt wrong. He looked toward the red figure disappearing from the room. Helping one of the strongest people in the world could be extremely useful, especially if the system was offering another peerless technique. Ethan raised his voice. "Eastern leader, I know how to fix the problem with your true chi." Dongfang Bubi stopped so suddenly it looked as if time had frozen around her. A red blur crossed the room. In the next instant, Dongfang Bubi stood directly in front of Ethan. The playful smile was gone. "Say that again." Ethan remained relaxed. "Your true chi isn't circulating properly. You've got an internal problem, and I know a way to treat it." Her eyes searched his face. "How did you find out?" "No comment," Ethan said. Before she could get angry, he recited the opening lines of the Bing Xinju revealed by the system. "If the heart is clear as ice, even the sky falling brings no shock. Through endless change, remain still within. Keep the spirit calm and the mind at peace." Dongfang Bubi silently repeated the words. Her expression changed. The verse alone seemed to ease part of the chaos inside her. That was enough to make her take Ethan seriously. "What do you want?" she asked. Ethan lifted his wine flask. "I travel, I drink, and I try not to make life complicated. Wine is always welcome." Dongfang Bubi immediately answered. "Name the wine. Even if it comes from the Imperial Palace, I'll get it." Ethan smiled. "Wine's only part of it." Dongfang Bubi's patience visibly thinned. "Then say the rest." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Until your condition is cured, stay with me and help me out. Pour my wine, handle small things, travel with me. Basically, be my personal attendant for a while." Dongfang Bubi stared at him as if she had misheard. "You want me to be your maid?" Her voice went dangerously quiet. Ethan shrugged. "Temporary attendant sounds nicer if that helps." He knew exactly how outrageous the request sounded. The leader of the Sun Moon Divine sect was feared across the martial world. Nobody sane would casually ask her to serve drinks. Ethan continued before she exploded. "There's a deadline. Once your internal injury is fixed, the agreement ends. I'm not asking you to give up your sect or spend the rest of your life following me around." Dongfang Bubi's expression shifted between anger, disbelief, and calculation. She clearly hated the idea, but she also could not ignore the chance to recover. Her condition had not appeared overnight. Sometime earlier, she had attempted to break through to a higher Grandmaster level and failed. The backlash had damaged her internal circulation. Her sunflower true chi still looked terrifying from the outside, but she could no longer use her full strength safely. With rival sects watching her constantly, that weakness could become fatal. Dongfang Booby thought through the situation. Her identity as a woman was itself a closely guarded secret. Most of the martial world believed the Sun Moon Divine Sect's leader was a man. If she traveled under another name for a short time, almost nobody would connect her to Dongfang Booby. Once she recovered, she could decide what to do about Ethan later. Finally, her anger disappeared behind a beautiful smile. Fine, since the young master insists, I'll agree for now. She gave him a look that promised this conversation was not forgotten. But outside, call me Dongfang Bai. My real identity must remain hidden. Ethan nodded. That's reasonable. I'm not interested in shouting your secrets across the Jianghu. Dongfang Bai folded her hands. And you'll seriously treat the injury? Ethan replied, as long as you keep your side of the agreement, I'll keep mine. She studied him for a moment, and then nodded. The deal was settled. Ethan stretched, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. Come on, Xiaobai, Ethan said with a grin. Let's go downstairs. I need another drink. Dongfang Bai's smile twitched. Being called Xiaobai by an 18-year-old stranger was clearly testing the limits of her patience. Still, she followed. Yes, young master, she answered through clenched teeth. Ethan heard the irritation in her voice and almost laughed. Only a few hours earlier, he had been a powerless drifter trying to understand why he had awakened in another world. Now he had killed a notorious criminal, gained multiple peerless martial arts, reached the edge of Grandmaster-level combat power, and somehow convinced one of the strongest people alive to travel with him. More importantly, Ethan finally understood how ridiculous the Dionysus system could become. Ordinary cultivation required years of patience, talent, teachers, resources, and luck. His system turned good wine into comprehension and opportunity. The more interesting the wine and the more unusual the situation, the greater the possible reward. For a man who already loved drinking, it was almost unfair. Still, Ethan knew better than to become careless. Tian Buguang had been strong among ordinary martial artists, but Dongfang Bai had shown him how large the gap was between experienced grandmasters and everyone below them. Even while injured, she had forced him to combine nearly everything he had learned just to keep up. That realization did not discourage him. It made him excited. The Jianghu was filled with legendary sects, hidden experts, famous weapons, secret manuals, and wines he had never tasted. Every encounter could turn into a new system opportunity. Every battle could sharpen his saber. Every jar of wine could push him somewhere higher. As Ethan and Dongfang Bai walked downstairs, people in Chuanyu courtyard glanced at them curiously. Ethan had entered alone and refused every woman offered to him. Now he was leaving his room beside an elegant beauty none of the staff recognized. Nobody dared ask questions. Dongfang Bai's presence alone made people instinctively keep their distance. Ethan returned to the main hall and ordered more wine. Dongfang Bai sat opposite him, still wearing the polite smile of someone imagining several ways to throw him through a wall. Ethan poured himself a cup, then slid the jar toward her. Agreement starts now. She stared at the jar. You are enjoying this far too much. Probably, Ethan admitted. Dongfang Bai sighed, picked up the wine, and poured for him. Ethan raised the cup in salute. To temporary partnerships. She gave him a cool look. To you curing me quickly. Ethan laughed and drank. The system remained quiet this time, but he did not mind. Not every cup needed to come with a miracle. For the first time since waking in Hengyang, Ethan allowed himself to think beyond immediate survival. He had money, a storage space, a divine weapon, several top-tier techniques, and a powerful companion whose relationship with him was already complicated. He had no fixed sect, no master, no family tying him down, and no reason to live cautiously. Ethan looked at the wine in his cup and smiled. In his old life, drinking had been a way to escape from reality. In this life, it had become the road leading him straight into it. The martial world was dangerous, chaotic, and full of people far stronger than him. That was fine. He finally had the chance to live the life he had once only written about. One cup, one saber, one road through the Jianghu. And this was only the beginning.